So I'm Maria Belen Poncio. They call me Belu. I'm from Córdoba, Argentina, and I'm the writer director of the film called When Everything Burns.
Could you say it in Spanish for me? Because it's a beautiful title.
Yeah, yeah. In Spanish, it's Cuando Todo Arde. So that's the original, but I always like translate it when.
Yeah, yeah. It makes
Yeah.
sense. It makes sense. But yeah, uh, this is really fascinating. It's an interesting character study, really about two contrasting characters, with Isabel being like the central focus, and her. There's no mistaking her convictions in this film, right? There's no gray with her. She has an agenda, an idea of what she wants, but that being said, it's kind of like throwing her, well, pardon the expression, into the fire, so to speak. When you look at characters like this and you develop characters like this, what was it about Isabella spoke to you so boldly, and why do you feel like she needed to resonate on the screen the way she did?
Yeah. I think it was, yeah, like I was very kind of focused on this idea of having a character that had like so much anger that she didn't know what to do with it. Like she couldn't like handle it. And maybe because I felt like that when that this happened. So this is based on like context, like a real context, and then like it's a fiction but based on like a real situation that we go through in my city with this intentional wildfires. So it was basically an emotion that was in me, like that frustration, that anger, and you are like, what can I do with this? And like, I at least don't have like a true answer of like, because sometimes I would say, like I would behave like the other brigadistas, the other firefighters. We are like, okay, let's try to change this, like by doing something, but kind of like inside the system following the rules. But sometimes you are like, I just want to like destroy everything because this is so like frustrating, and like no one is doing anything about it. And like it's like two like things that like maybe I feel inside me sometimes. So I was like, okay, I find it interesting to just put everything, all these ideas in different characters, or even the other character, the old man, which is like probably someone that needs a job, like it's not really like wanting to do any harm, but in a way it's part of it. So like there is no, I feel like I'm interested in characters that are not like bad or good, but they are just like they had like a mix of everything in themselves. And so the contradictions and the tensions that happen when these people interact is like, okay, no one is really wrong here, but the problem is still there, and like no one is really like perfect also. It's like kind of like how the world is for me, it's like just complicated.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I also think they're a product of their own environments as well, right? And how they grew up and where they are in their lives. And top of
Yeah.
that, it, and that had, I'm sure that has to factor with it. And along those lines, though, this film also has, I don't want to say a political bend, because it really doesn't show that aspect, even though there is, you know, an ideal that especially Isabel is portraying here,
Hmm.
but it does give you a sense of what is going on in the reality of that part of the world. It was that super important to highlight for you as well, as making this a part of that film.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wanted to like, I started by that event of like that happened, and I was like, oh, I want to like explore this world. I didn't want it to be like a film about, oh, this is this problem, this is what's happening. To
Mm,
me, it was more interesting to like dive into that context and say like, okay, what are the little stories that are being like intertwined in this world. So I wanted to focus on that, but like still like having a bigger picture of the situation. And although I know that some people get a little bit lost of like what exactly is going on, but I feel like if you're interested, you can Google and the information is there. So I didn't want to do like an explanation of the context and all, but just the feeling of like destruction of the environment, and like people trying to like save whatever, where the place where they live. And clearly there is like a responsible, which is like these companies that are building. So if you get these points, to me it's fine, and then if you want to know more, you can just like search. But it's not a movie about explaining the context, it's more about these characters that live inside this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And weaving a narrative around two characters in the fashion that you do, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but the idea of putting this together in such a short period of time, and yet being able to connect these two characters and the situation together, was did you have a good design going into this? Was it something you found in the edit, or something that you were trying to work on and it just kind of shaped itself?
Hmm. I think it was pretty much there in the script, because even though I was like my main character was Isabel, for some reason I was every version of the story. It always had like an encounter of two
Mm,
people that were not necessarily family, or I was interested in the dynamic of two people that are like strangers, but the only thing that they have in common is the world they live in, right? The
hmm
environment, which is like the same space, the same mountain, the same. And so I was interested in that relationship that is not so easy to follow, because it's like we can all understand a relationship between a father and a daughter, and then like there is things that like, we all kind of know the rules, but like I find interest in these relationships that are like these other people that we interact, and how far we can go, or how much we can connect, or like do we leave them, do we do something, like I was interested in that. So like every iteration of the script had always this like encounter at some point, which is like neighbor, just like a
hmm
neighbor that
hmm
is in the other side of the spectrum, and is very much in a mirror in a way of her, but also like the opposite at the same time. It's like, I don't know.
Right. I think they kind of see a little bit of each other in each other at a
Yeah,
point, right? It's about finding common ground for the most part.
definitely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You know, talk about, because this film in particular really leans heavy on sound design. I mean, the sound is super important in
Yeah.
creating context of the imminent danger, the fear, but also the angst as well. And so when you look when you looked at creating this film from that context, because obviously shooting something with fire around it and stuff like that, that's a little more challenging, right? So creating a sound design that enriches that, was that something that you were concerned about? Did you guys do a lot of playing around with that in the edit and kind of trying to figure out how exactly that was going to all come together for you?
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely a big challenge, but at the same time, a big like solution, right? Like a
Yeah.
big resource, because like with our biggest limit was how to make the situation believable.
Yeah.
And of course, like my ideal world was like, oh, if a fire happens, actually we go and shoot it. But then that's not possible. Like that's very complicated just to coordinate all that. Like it's kind of impossible. And of course, we were not gonna set any fire, that for sure. So that's why at the end of the film, I just clarify, because I'm like, some people think they are real fires, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that aside, like we were thinking with the DP, and we were like, okay, maybe if we manage to get like three shots in which the effects work and we see it visually, then after that we can just like rely on the sound design. But then it was like, yeah, like an intense work with Juan Manuel Geri. He's also from Cordova. He's a great sound designer, and we were like working a lot with that, like building the fire, but also the surroundings, like thinking how would the animals respond to the situation, like
hmm
would they leave, would they stay, would they shout, would not, like then other like what else, what are all the sounds, yeah, a part
hmm
of the flame, like the wind, the other plants, the animals, the people in the distance, like what are, and then at some point it becomes a little bit like more subjective. So like we
Yeah.
kind of went out of the realism at some point. We were more like, okay, we are with her emotion, and
Hmm.
so we just added some random stuff that are not real, but like I feel like it's to enhance whatever she's going through at the moment.
Hmm. There's also the contrast of it going from very light to very dark really fast too, because that's what happens when you're engulfed in flames. You know?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. We embraced the darkness for sure. Um,
Yeah.
and although the DP was very worried about that part of the darkness, she was like, "No," but I was like, we're fine. But yeah, and also the fact that the fire is the only thing that gives light at some point. So the
Uh-huh.
only light source is that is I don't know. Like I feel like the fire, apart from being the external threat, I think it's also to me the metaphor of like what is inside her. Uh,
Right.
like whatever she's feeling is like that, like kind of destroying everything and like kind of the same. Like it's a parallel. So
The other interesting thing I found really fascinating that is really well handled here is this takes place mostly 90% of it is outside. And we're not talking about a sound stage and an environment where there's controllable element. We're talking about vast fields and dirt and a lot of. I'm sure it's pretty windy there. I'm sure it's very drab there. So setting those kind of things up, not only like dealing with the sound elements, but the shot design and everything like that, and capturing that vastness, was that super important to you guys when you were putting it together?
yeah, definitely. Like to me, the whole like making a like achieving a good portrait of the space, like the space as almost as a character, to me was very
Hmm.
important. And also because of the idea of time during the film, it is very important also like how things go fast at some point, and then like all the first part is like super fast, 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 and then it's like slow when she stops. Then
Uh-huh.
to me achieving that sense of like real time was very important, so that's why we did almost everything in like one shot that is like kind of a choreography and goes around, and like it's all very like planned and choreographed around the camera, almost like a dance. So that was, yeah, that was definitely like the idea. And then that's why in the edit I didn't have a lot of options in,
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
was every scene was almost like one shot that was like a, so that was the goal. That was what we tried with the DP, and I think, well, she did an amazing job, of course.
Hmm.
But yeah, we really rehearsed those movements like a couple of times.
How important is it for you, not just to represent where you're from, but also to represent it as a woman filmmaker? How important is that for you in your journey as a filmmaker?
Yeah, but quite a yeah, quite a priority, I have to say. Like both, well, representing the place and the stories that surrounded me when I grew up, it's kind of natural. Like,
Yeah.
well, right now, it's the first time I'm writing something that doesn't happen in my city, and it's that I want to shoot in New York because have been living there for like 3 years now. So I'm
Hmm.
like, right now I feel like I can write something about New York, but before it was like all my memories, all my thoughts are there. So it's just like it's kind of naturally. And same with like women characters. I tend to write women characters because I just feel more comfortable and more familiar with the way they think and behave.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I find it very important. Like it's both natural, but also to me very important to like represent women that I feel like I haven't seen that much, like that are for me more like real, that are, I don't know, like that have like agency, that maybe they are like focused on other things that are not necessarily what we're used to seeing women focusing on screen. Like, I don't know, just broadening the spectrum of like the image that we have of women and of Latin America, for example, or whatever, or Argentina. And then in the crew, to me, it's very, very important to have females. I wouldn't say like entire female
No,
crew,
yeah.
but just like, for example, like working with Gianna was amazing. Also, like my producer was a woman. The line producer was a woman. Like there were a lot of women, and to me, it's just that like not a matter only of making space and like opportunity, but also because I just love working with women. We bring is
Fair
so
enough. Yeah. I mean, so how important is it that a festival like Holly Shorts, you're representing your country there? Because South America filmmaking is flourishing right now. There's a lot of really good stuff coming from there. People aren't aware of that. I've seen it over the last 3 or 4 years. It's happening. And it's very difficult to make things there. From what I've been told. So, how important is it that you're representing Argentina and this in this film festival, and that this film festival is embracing what you're doing?
yeah, for sure. Like all the windows and opportunities that we have, like it's very appreciated, and I'm very honored to be part of this festival, as well as the short has been having like a great journey, and
Hmm.
thankfully, like, so I'm very happy to see that, yeah, that the whatever we do and like the stories we tell from Argentina are like just going around and landing on other people that see the world different or just have other different experiences. And yeah, it's like very, yeah, I feel honored and thankful for that opportunity.
So, what is it about independent film that captures you? What do you love about independent film?
Well, on one side, I feel like being able to share my questions of the world, my perspectives, like the things I think about or that like move me of human beings and society we live in. Like just being able to like share those questions and make other people, I don't know, just think about these things or just feel those things. Like to me, it's very like it's just amazing. And also the magic of the whole thing, like the collective part of it. I love how you start with something that is just in your head, and then suddenly like 20 people are just like working for that, and then we all like get into this with these results that is like almost impossible when you thought about it the first time, and then it's there. It's just so like it's kind of magical. So it's so fun and fascinating, and I don't know, I love watching films. So when I managed to do one, I'm like, wow, like I can't believe that this is actually happened, and yeah.